And to the surprise of nobody with two brain cells to rub together, mail-in balloting fraud is real. Now, this is glorious because it is the Democrat Party screwing over Bernie Sanders finally coming back to bite them in the ass. Now, guys, I apologize. I know I have not posted any videos in the past few days. I've been dealing with what I believe to be strep throat. It's still not great, so please bear with me if my voice goes out a little bit. But we have this from the New York Post. Confessions of a voter fraud. I was a master at fixing mail-in ballots. So a top Democratic operative says voter fraud, especially with mail-in ballots, is no myth. He knows this because he has been doing it on a grand scale for decades. So this is not anything new. And we're going to see here that it is not limited to mail-in balloting. But for the most part, mail-in ballots have become the latest flashpoint in the 2020 elections. While President Trump and the GOP warn of widespread manipulation of the absentee vote that will swell with COVID polling restrictions, many Democrats and their media allies have dismissed such concerns as unfounded. Yes, despite the fact that we already know what has gone on in Paterson, New Jersey, where they're actually having to completely redo the vote. The NAACP was calling to have the entire vote washed away. Despite that, they have the gall to look Americans in the eye and say that Trump's claims of mail-in voter fraud are baseless and without evidence. They're not without evidence, they are with proof. But as the political insider who spoke on condition of anonymity because he fears prosecution, first of all, we need to grant this guy complete and total immunity and have him name every name he knows. So we need to grant this guy immunity, find out everything he knows, everything that he has done, and who all has hired him to do this, so that we can get those people out of office. Excuse me. But the political insider who spoke on condition of anonymity because he fears prosecution said fraud is more the rule than the exception. So this is not a small operation. This is generally how mail-in balloting works. So if you've been wondering why the Democrats are pushing for universal mail-in balloting, and they've also pushed to remove any signature checks and any security measures from mail-in balloting, it's because they have this planned. And if you're wondering why Joe Biden has not really even been campaigning, it's because they've had this planned. So, his dirty work has taken him through the weeds of municipal and federal elections in Paterson, Atlantic City, Camden, Newark, Hoboken, and Hudson County, and his fingerprints can be found on local legislative, mayoral, and congressional races across the Garden State. Some of the biggest names and highest office holders in New Jersey have benefited from his tricks, according to campaign records, the Post reviewed. An election that is swayed by 500 votes, 1,000 votes. It can make a difference, the tipster said. It can be enough to flip states. That's right. So in swing states, sure, this probably doesn't happen in places that are largely one way or the other. So it probably doesn't happen in New York where it's always going to be a Democrat, or it's probably not going to happen in Idaho where it's always going to be a conservative or a Republican. But it is going to happen in any swing states. So you have to wonder how many elections have been completely fraudulent because of the Democratic Party methodology. The whistleblower, whose identity, rap sheet, and long history working as a consultant to various campaigns were confirmed by the Post, says he has not only changed ballots himself over the years, but led teams of fraudsters and mentored at least 20 operatives in New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, a critical 2020 swing state. There is no race in New Jersey, from city council to United States Senate, that we haven't worked on, the tipster said. I worked on a fire commissioner's race in Burlington County. The smaller the race, the easier it is to do. A Bernie Sanders diehard with no horse in the presidential race, he said he felt compelled to come forward in hopes that states would act now to fix the glaring security problems presented by mail-in ballots. So that is why I said that the Democrat Party screwing over Bernie Sanders is finally coming to bite them in the ass. Because I've been saying this since day one, that mail-in balloting, especially universal mail-in balloting, is going to undermine any sort of credibility that the election has. It's going to destroy and erode any faith in the electoral process that we as Americans hold so dearly. And if you do not have any faith in the electoral process, the losing side is never going to accept the results, which is going to lead to war. Flat out. This is a real thing, he said, and there is going to be a fucking war come November 3rd over this stuff. Yup, just like I just said. If they know how the sausage was made, they could fix it. Mail-in voting can be complicated. Tough enough that 84,000 New Yorkers had their mailed votes thrown out in the June 23rd Democratic presidential primary for incorrectly filling them out. But for political pros, they're a piece of cake. In New Jersey, for example, it begins with a blank mail-in ballot delivered to a registered voter in a large envelope. Inside the packet is a return envelope, a certificate of mail-in voter, which the voter must sign, and the ballot itself. So they must sign the certificate and the ballot. That's where the election rigging springs into action. So the first step is phony ballots. The ballot has no specific security measures, like a stamp or watermark. Well, that's an issue. So the insider said he would just make his own ballots. These people literally just print out their own ballots. All you got to do is have the right paper stock. That's it. I just put the ballot through the copy machine and it comes out with the same way. But the return envelopes are more secure than the ballot. You could never recreate the envelope, he said, so they had to be collected from real voters. He would have his operatives fan out, going house to house, convincing voters to let them mail completed ballots on their behalf as a public service. The fraudster and his minions would then take the sealed envelopes home and hold them over boiling water. Over boiling water. You have to steam it to loosen the glue, said the insider. He would then remove the real ballot, place the counterfeit ballot inside the signed certificate, and reseal the envelope. He would literally go in and change people's ballots, change their votes. So to anybody out there wanting to mail your ballot in, no. And you know what? Even if you're a Democrat, there could be Republican operatives doing this same damn thing. We do not know. You have to steam it to loosen the glue, the insider said. Okay, so 5 minutes per ballot tops. So you could do 12 ballots per hour. So that means for every single person in an 8-hour day, you could change about 100 ballots. Now, if you had a whole team of people, if you had 5 people, you could change 500 ballots in a single day. And that's just an 8-hour day. And that's top. So, I mean, it could even be more than that. I mean, you get 10 people, and next thing you know, you're changing 300 ballots in a single day. The insider said he took care not to stuff the fake ballots into just a few public mailboxes, but sprinkle them around town. That way, he avoided the attention that foiled a sloppy voter fraud operation in Paterson, New Jersey, city council race this year, where 900 ballots were found in just 3 mailboxes. And that was the case that I was talking about earlier. So we do have people... The Patterson case seems to be a issue of ineptitude and fraud, but we do have people who seem to be very skilled and well-versed in how to commit voter fraud, and this has been going on for decades. If you're not outraged, I don't know why. You just, I mean, it's... Leave a comment. Let me know if you think this is okay, because this is absolute fraud, and it is an undermining of all of our constitutional premises and practices. If they had just spread them in different mailboxes, nothing would have happened. See, they would have gotten away with it. So the other form is inside jobs. The tipster said sometimes postal employees are in on the scam. Oh, postal employees are in on the scam. And we now have a Democrat Party that is pushing for universal mail-in ballots to be collected and returned by a post office union that has now endorsed Joe Biden. I think not. If you are voting for Donald Trump, do whatever the hell you can to go and cast your vote in person. Do not use mail-in balloting. They will take your vote, they will change it out, and next thing you know, you are now voting for Joe Biden. You have a postman who is a rabid anti-Trump guy, and he's working in Bedminster or some Republican stronghold. He can take those filled out ballots knowing that 95% are going to a Republican, and he can just throw those in the garbage. Yeah. That's a point we've been making for a while, is that you have too many intermediaries in the mail-in ballot process for there to be any sense of security. In some cases, mail carriers were members of the work crew and would sift ballots from the mail and hand them over to the operative. In 2017, more than 500 mail-in ballots in New York City never arrived to the Board of Elections for races that November, leaving hundreds disenfranchised. They eventually were discovered in April 2018. For some undetermined reason, some baskets of mail that were bound to the New York City Board of Elections were put off to the side at the Brooklyn processing facility, city elections boss Michael Ryan said at the time of discovery. So they'll just take conservative areas, Republican areas, and they will just take your ballots and they will just discard them so that your vote does not count. These are Democrats, people. This is how they operate. Have you not noticed through all of this COVID shutdown, through all of their endorsements of riots, that these people will let the country burn before they will ever lose their grip on power? And so if you see a Republican who is a never-Trump Republican, then you need to look at them with the most skeptical eye you have, because they are likely in on some sort of take with the Democrats. And, you know, I talk about this I don't talk about this all the time on the channel, but I talk about it with people, how there were so many establishment Republicans that were so on board with the Democrats' globalist shift leftward, they just didn't want it to happen as quickly. And I would even go so far as to think that some of these are Democratic plants in the Republican Party that are designed to slowly bring the Republicans along board under the leftist Democrat agenda. Sorry, that was a tangent, but I had to get that off my chest. All right, nursing homes. Oh, great. So now they're taking advantage of the elderly. Hitting up assisted living facilities and helping the elderly fill out absentee ballots was a goldmine of votes. They are literally going after the most vulnerable people in our society and taking advantage of them, making them think that they are doing them some sort of favor and then defrauding them. There are nursing homes where the nurse is actually a paid operative. Wow. And they go room by room by room to these old people who still want to feel they're relevant, said the whistleblower. They literally fill it out for them. So you can imagine some 92-year-old granny. The nurse comes by and says, "Oh, would you like me to fill that out? Just tell me who you want me to set your vote for, and I'll take care of it. I'll mail it in for you." And she's, "Oh, thank you so much. That's so sweet of you." Meanwhile, they're defrauding them and actually taking away their vote. The insider pointed to former Jersey City Mayor Gerald McCann, who was sued in 2007 after a razor-thin victory for a local school board seat for allegedly tricking incompetent and ill residents of nursing homes into casting ballots for him. McCann denied it, though he did admit to assisting some nursing home residents with absentee ballot applications. Oh, okay, he denied it, though, so he's clear. He was just doing the Lord's work going into those nursing homes and getting votes for his damn self. Voter impersonation. When all else failed, the insider would send operatives to vote live in polling stations. Wow. This isn't just mail-in votes. Particularly in states like New Jersey and New York, which do not require voter ID. This is why we need voter ID. You need an ID to do damn near anything else in this country that isn't buying a fucking box of Legos. And why would we not need it to vote? I swear, the Democrats do not like any sort of election security, because if they had it, they would lose every single race. Our democracy has been stolen by the Democratic Party, and it's been happening for decades. We have no semblance of a republic anymore. And it is because of these people. And it is only because of Donald Trump are we actually looking to gain that back. I'm telling you, the Democrat Party needs to be disbanded. They need to be abolished. And anybody in it needs to be investigated. And if they are found to commit crimes, prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, because the corruption in the Democratic Party is so pervasive. All right, when all else failed, which does not require voter ID. The best targets were registered voters who routinely skip presidential or municipal elections, information which is publicly available. Maybe we need to make our voting rolls, our voting rosters, less public, so that these people can't just go through and say, oh, this person hasn't voted in 5 election cycles. All right, you're going to go through as them. You don't need to show an ID. You just got to go in and say that's who you are and maybe confirm a piece of information. No. We need to be able to prove that the person casting the vote is the person that we think is casting the vote. You fill out these index cards with that person's name and district, and you go around the city and say, you're going to be him, you're going to be him, the insider said of how he dispatched his teams of dirty tricksters. In the polling place, the fake voter would sign in, get in line, and vote, the insider said. The imposter would simply recreate the signature that already appears in the voter roll as best they could. And you wonder why the Democrats wanted to get rid of any kind of signature checks. Because they know they are going to lose this election if they do not steal it. Which they have no moral objections to stealing the election. These people just want power. This is the same party that wanted the power over slaves. This is the same party that wanted the power to segregate the races. This is the same party that has been seeking power since day one. All right. Where was I? The imposters would simply recreate the signature that already appears in the voter roll as best they could. In the rare instance that a real voter had already signed in and cast a ballot, the impersonator would just chalk it up to an innocent mistake and bolt. Well, what happens if the person comes after that operative? And they come to check in to cast their vote, and all of a sudden it says, no, you've already signed in. Then that person literally gets their vote stolen from them by an identity thief. Bribing voters. Oh, great. I mean, these people know no bounds. The Democrats know no bounds for their corruption. And this is not to sit here and say that Republicans are not corrupt. The Republican Party is free of corruption. That's absolutely not true. But it's an inversion. The Democrats, I mean, they are just absolute filthmongerers. The tipster said New Jersey homeless shelters offered a nearly inexhaustible pool of reliable, viable voters. They get to register where they live and they go to the polls and vote, he said, laughing at the roughly $174 per vote Mike Bloomberg spent to win his third mayoral term. All right, time to look into Bloomberg. He said he could have delivered the same results at a 70% discount, like when Frank Poopy, I don't know how this, whatever. Frank Raya, a real estate developer in Hoboken, Nabob, was convicted last year on federal charges for paying low-income residents $50 a pop to vote how he wanted during the 2013 municipal elections. Organizationally, the tipster said his voter fraud schemes in the Garden State and elsewhere resembled mafia organizations. Yup. This is very mafioso. And from what I hear, Hillary Clinton's dad had some ties to the Chicago mob. So it's no wonder that as Hillary Clinton became the figurehead of the Democratic Party, that they started to institute, well, maybe they've been doing it since before then, but really ratcheted up these mafioso-like tactics for the Democratic Party. Democrat Party, not Democratic. Fuck. Again, I fell into a trap that you read that over and over again. They're not Democratic. If anything, this proves that they are anything but Democratic. All right, handing the day-to-day man. All right, so remember, mafia organizations with a boss, usually the campaign manager, handing off the day-to-day managing of the mob soldiers to the underboss, which is the guy being talked to here. The actual candidate was usually kept in the dark deliberately so they could maintain plausible deniability. With mail-in ballots, partisans from both parties hash out and count ballots at the local board of elections, debating which ballots make the cut and which need to be thrown out because of irregularities. The insider said any ballots offered up by him or his operation would come with a bent corner along the voter certificate, which contains the voter signature. So Democrat board of election counters would know the fix was in and not object. This is a massive operation. It doesn't stay bent, but you can tell it's been bent, the tipster said. Until the certificate is approved, the ballot doesn't matter. They don't get to see the ballot unless they approve the certificate. I invented bending corners, the insider boasted. You didn't invent bending corners. Come on. What kind of code breaker do you think you are? Bending a corner. Boasted. The insider boasted, saying once the fixed ballots were mixed in with the normal ones, the bed was made. Once a ballot was opened, it's an anonymous ballot. So, wow. While federal law warns of prison sentences for up to 5 years, busted voter frauds have seen far less punishment. While in 2018, a Texas woman was sentenced to 5 years, an Arizona man busted for voting twice in the mail was given just 3 years probation. A study by the Conservative Heritage Foundation found more than 1,000 instances of documented voter fraud in the United States, most of which occurred over the last 20 years. Now, the left often uses that stat as a means to say, oh, it's only 1,000 cases over the last 20 years. But it looks like they have such a well-oiled machine that 1,000 instances probably represents like 1 out of 1,000. If not more. If not more. There's nothing new about these techniques, says Hans von Spakovsky, a senior legal fellow at Heritage who manages their election law reform initiative. Everything he's talking about is perfectly possible. The Board of Elections declined to answer the Post questions on ballot security. That is because there is none. So unless you want to see a civil war in this country and blood in the streets come November, you better reach out and say enough with the mail-in balloting. I don't want to see war. I don't want to see blood on the streets. But if they're going to fraudulently take Donald Trump out of office, remove him through voter fraud, it kind of starts to make sense why they are not really worried about the Biden campaign, why they're not worried about the fact that he is obviously demented, and why they're not worried about whether he's actually out on the campaign trail. They're fine with just keeping him in his basement because they know that if he wins the election, it's going to be because they were able to steal it for him. This is going to be an absolute unmitigated disaster, and it is going to cause all kinds of issues. And the Democrats do not give a flying fuck. That is why the Democrat Party needs to be disbanded. But we can't just disband them so that they just scurry like rats. The rats that they are. The cockroaches that they are. They need to be indicted. They need to be sent to prison. And then they need to lose any right. Just to me, I'm looking more and more like we just need to open up a little station in Antarctica and send a bunch of motherfuckers there. And just, you're on your own. Have fun in Antarctica. Anyways, guys, that's the video. If you don't subscribe to the channel, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Like this video. Share this video. This one especially, because people need to know what is going on with voter fraud, and especially the mail-in balloting that the Democrats are trying to push as a universal method for our electoral process here in 2020. Let them know that this is the theft of our democratic process of our republic. And don't forget to follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Parler at Ram Thorburn. And if you're interested in contributing to the channel, there are links to my Subscribe Star, Patreon, and PayPal in the description below. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.